This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make cabinet doors, but not just any cabinet doors with glass in them. Woo! It's not that hard. So follow along, learn how to do it, become a cabinet door master, and if you feel like it, you could subscribe down below. Also, check out the video description for tools, supplies, and a bunch of other cool stuff. Okay, let's do it.
White snow, red sky, reach up for so high.
Don't start thinking I'm just some insane person making random cabinet doors for no reason. I actually need these doors, 8 of them, for an upcoming built-in project that will be in my next video. But I thought I'd do a separate video just on the doors because glass cabinet doors are just a bit different than regular cabinet doors. So here's the basic shape of my cabinet door. It's really just a frame and a piece of glass is going to be inset on the inside. Whenever I'm making any cabinet doors, whether they be glass or a floating panel, I always like to draw out the door first so that I can get my dimensions exactly how I want them. Now I know that the width of the door is 15 1/16 of an inch. I know that the height from top to bottom is 23 1/4. But I need to determine the size of all my individual pieces. My rails and stiles are 2 1/4 inches wide. I got 2 of them. That equals 4 1/2. So if I take 15 1/16, I subtract 4 1/2 inches. That gets me 10 9/16, which will be my interior piece dimension. And then of course my outer dimension, well, it is what it is, 23 1/4. And this is where things get a little different from a traditional just floating panel door. If I did a traditional floating panel door, it would look something like this. I'd have my groove that floated my panel. I'd have my tenons that fit into that slot to make a completely encased frame that would lock permanently that floating panel. And then I'd have to determine the length of my interior piece plus the extra I need for those tenons. So my dimensions would be a little bit different. But we're not doing a traditional floating panel, we're using glass. Now you might be wondering, why don't I just lock the glass in there like I would with a floating panel? Well, glass can break. I have kids, it happens. And I want a way that we can replace the glass if we need to. So I don't want to lock it in there permanently. I want to build it in a way that I can take the glass out and put new glass in when my son smashes a truck through the front. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do here. The end thickness of my doors will be 3/4 of an inch. So I'm starting with 4/4 poplar because this will be a paint grade cabinet door. And then after I mill it down and plane it and everything, I'll get to my final 3/4 inch dimension. Now I start by rough cutting all my pieces. You got to make sure to think ahead and know how many pieces you can get out so you don't waste a bunch of material. I can cut these long pieces in half and get my 2 side pieces, and then I can cut a long piece in 1/4 and I can get 4 of my bottom and top pieces. So I figured that all out and realized I needed 12 of these long 24-inch pieces to net my 8 doors. After doing that math, I take all of my pre-cut pieces over to the joiner, and first I edge joint them to get a nice straight edge on one side. Then once I have a perfectly flat edge, I place that edge against my fence and I face joint each board to get a nice flat face that will be my guide when I run them through the planer. Did somebody say planer? Cut to dramatic shot of me cranking the planer to the correct height, and go. I run all the pieces through the planer to get my final 3/4 inch thickness. You can see you got to start with the 4/4 because after joining it you lose some material and then planing it. If you try and start with 3/4, well then you're just hoping that your boards are nice and square to begin with, and let me tell you, that never happens. By starting with 4/4 we ensure that we can get them perfect before we start cutting them down to size. Speaking of cutting them down to size, the last thing I do is take my newly milled down boards over to the table saw, and I cut them into strips that are 2 1/4 inches wide. I always do 2 1/4 for cabinet doors. I don't know what got that into my head, but I've been building cabinets this way for years now, and 2 1/4 just seems like a good size to do. So I don't think there's a wrong size. I mean, too thick might look silly, but anyways, after running all the pieces through the table saw, I now have all the pieces I need to start cutting my cabinet door parts. Look at those pieces. Beautiful. Since we already determined the size that our rails and stiles will be, I set up a stop block on the miter saw and I just start cutting. Now I should note that after determining my size, I add 1/8 of an inch to the overall length of my door. You might be wondering why. Don't you want it the exact size? Well, no. I want 1/8 of an inch wiggle room. I will show you why in a little bit. Just be patient. For now, watch this nice montage of me laying out parts and pieces. This is one of those pointless points in the YouTube video that I could have left on the editing room floor, but I don't know. I just feel like it's not a real YouTube video without some unnecessary shots of me setting pieces of wood on a table. Anyways, that's enough of that. With all of my pieces cut, I can roughly lay out what each door will look like. I've got my rails, I've got my stiles, and they will be connected to form a rectangular frame just like this. But wait, you don't have any tenons. How are you going to hook those together? You're not going to use pocket screws, are you? No, see? They're already... No. Yeah, we should hook these together. But I'll show you how I'm going to do it. And not just one way, I'm going to show you 2 different ways you can do it. The first way, and my preferred method, would be the domino joiner. Now, don't get your panties in a twist. I know most people don't have a $1,300 domino joiner just laying around their shop. So as I say all the time, you could also use a cheap $60 doweling jig and some dowels. Now, I say all the time that you could use a doweling jig, but I realized I never actually show you how to do it. So after showing you how I do it with the dominoes, I will then show you exactly how I do it with the doweling jig. You get the exact same result, one's just a lot quicker. So first, the domino joiner. After marking out all my joints, I line it up with the domino joiner and I ream out all my mortises. I fill each mortise with a little glue, I insert a domino, and then I slap the whole thing together. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. Ha! I fit it in another video. And then I put the whole thing in clamps and I let the glue dry. One thing I do like to do before I clamp it completely down is just to double check that everything is nice and square. You don't want to clamp it up in a wonky way that's going to make your overall cabinet door out of square. That's no fun. After I'm ensured that it's square, I like to put one clamp in the middle, holding the door to the clamp itself. This just again makes sure that everything stays nice and flat and square, and you get a good successful glue up. Once that's done, I set it aside and, oh yeah, forgot. I'm going to show the doweling jig method. Now this is exactly the same as the domino joiner. I've said it before and I'll say it again, a doweling jig is just an inexpensive domino joiner that takes a lot longer to use, but it accomplishes the exact same thing. Instead of drawing a line to connect my joints and line up the domino joiner, I'm just going to number each joint so that I can get them lined back up correctly. Then I will take the doweling jig. Now this is a self-centering doweling jig, so as you clamp it down, it self-centers right in the middle of your stock. Now this is kind of hard to see, but inside that little hole there are 2 lines. So I just draw a pencil line matching the 2 lines on the doweling jig, just like that. Then using the correct size drill bit that corresponds with the size of my dowels, I drill inside each of the predetermined slot things at the top of the doweling jig. You notice that piece of green tape, that keeps me from going too deep. I only want to go half the depth of a dowel, so it, goes halfway in one piece and halfway in the other piece. Anyways, after I get one piece drilled out, I then place it where it needs to go against my other piece of wood, and using those 2 lines that I drew from the doweling jig, I transfer those onto my connecting piece. Then all I have to do is use those 2 lines to re-clamp down that doweling jig, and I drill 2 more holes, just like you're seeing me do here. I'm not gonna lie, using this doweling jig has reminded me how much quicker the domino joiner is. Anyways, after drilling out all of your pieces, it's just the same scoop as with the dominoes. You fill each hole with a little glue, rub some glue on your dowels, you insert your dowels into each hole, and then you slap the whole thing together. Like I said, it's the exact same end result. One just costs $65 and the other about $1,300. But if you're going to do this on any scale at all, I would highly recommend to just purchase a domino joiner. If you're doing this for a profession, it will definitely pay for itself in the time that it saves. I timed myself doing the domino method and the doweling jig method, and I was able to do the domino method in 1/8 of the amount of time it took me to use the doweling jig. But the important thing is I got all of them done, and after they come out of clamps, I bet you $1 million you couldn't go through and pick out the one with dowels versus the one with dominoes. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives, where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey. Whether you're a beginner, pro, or dabbler, Skillshare has something for you. One class that I just took and thoroughly enjoyed was portrait photography. Shoot and edit Instagram-worthy shots, taught by Jessica Kobisi.
I really like my photography to defy the expectations of what women are supposed to be. It's really through my poses. I use harsh lighting at times. You can take something that some people don't see as being pretty and really make it into something cool.
There are thousands of different classes you can take on a wide array of topics, like this class I just took on shooting videos for Instagram.
Hi, I'm Halise, a digital storyteller and YouTuber, and ever since I bought my first camcorder at 12, I've been making videos. Whether you want to say a lot or a little, filmmaking is a really strong form of communication.
The nice thing about Skillshare is it is specifically curated for learning, meaning there's no ads and it's less than $10 a month for a membership. And if that's not good enough, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of the premium membership, so you can explore your creativity. With all of our doors clamped and the glue sufficiently dry, I pop them all out of clamps, and it is time to start putting some glass in these beasts. Look, it's like my own personal picture frame. Now, remember earlier when I said I like to add 1/8 of an inch to the overall length of each door? Well, that's where this technique comes in. After getting them out of clamps, I take them over to the table saw using my crosscut sled, and I trim 1/16 of an inch off the end of each door. Why? Well, if they are out of square by a few thousandths of an inch here or there, this just ensures that after running them through the table saw on my crosscut sled, which I know is perfectly square, I now know that each door is in turn perfectly square. It's just helpful when it comes to mounting all your doors. With that step done, I first sand each door down thoroughly, because I love sanding. I just feel like if I say it enough over and over again that maybe I'll actually start to like sanding. After using the power sander, I hit the interior edge just by hand with a little 150 grit sandpaper. Remember, these are all going to be painted, and I'll do a final sanding before I get to that step. Next, it's time to start fitting our glass. Now, if you just want clear glass, you could go to any mom and pop window glass store in town, and they will gladly cut you a piece of glass to perfectly fit your cabinet. But I wanted something a bit fancier. So I found this website online. I honestly forget the name of it, but I'll include a link in the video description, and I ordered this kind of vintage textured glass. It's a little, the word I'm looking for, not see-through. Anyways, I purposely ordered the glass about 1/2 inch bigger than my interior opening, as you can see here. Now, we have to set the glass down in the door using this 1/2 inch rabbiting bit. So after plopping this bit into my router, I adjust it so that it's just about 1/16 of an inch over the thickness of the glass. This will just ensure that our glass sits down just below the surface of our cabinet door. Now, whenever I'm using a big bit, now when I say big bit, meaning it wants to take off a 1/2 inch at a time, I never do the full 1/2 inch to start with. I start by doing a shallow, maybe 1/4 inch deep pass just to knock down all the edges, and then after I do that all the way around, I do my final 1/2 inch depth. This also helps just prevent any chips or tear outs you might get as you're routing out the inside of your cabinet door. So zoom, zoom, and just like that, I've routed out a 1/2 inch little lip for our glass to sit down inside that cabinet door, nice and tight. But wait, we have a little bit of a problem. Because our router bit is round, as you can see, it leaves the corners rounded over. This is a problem because our glass is square, not round. So we gotta knock that corner down to match the profile of our glass. Now, lots of times I will just eyeball this with a chisel and knock it out and not worry that it's not perfect. But if you want it to be absolutely dead accurate, what I like to do is take another one of my cabinet doors, doesn't matter if it's routed out yet or not, and clamp it down on top of the router door that we need to chisel. As you can see, this creates a nice guide in that corner that'll give us a surface to rest our chisel on and make sure that we get a perfect profile squared off cut. Then all you have to do is stick your chisel down there, tap, 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 and voila. Voila. Man, I always got a problem with that one. Gotta think of another word to say. Dun da da da! A nice squared off corner. Now, if you've done it correctly and all your measurements are right, your piece of glass should fit perfectly recessed into the back of your cabinet door. I like just a 1/16 of an inch maybe of wiggle room left to right to allow for wood movement. Look, it's like a window. And every time I go behind it, my facial expression magically changes. Man, that seemed a lot cooler of a shot in my head. Now, our glass may be recessed in at this point, but I have a feeling it's gonna fall out, and there's no way to hook the door onto the cabinet, so there's a few more things we have to take care of. Next, I'm gonna mark out to drill for my European style hinges. I got this cheap little, I don't know, $1.50 piece of plastic that works as a template. I know you can get a bunch of fancy jigs, but this is cheap and it works great. I just mark out where my hole needs to be drilled and where the corresponding screws for the hinges are going to land. After marking that about 2.5 inches down from either side, I take it over to the drill press and I just eyeball the depth. Yep, just eyeball it, because the Forstner bit is the exact same depth as the cabinet hinge. So if you drill so it's flush with the top of the Forstner bit, your cabinet hinge will fit perfect every time. Don't overcomplicate these things, just get it done already. After drilling out the holes for the hinges, I like to take the piece back over to my workbench and reinsert that piece of glass and just double check and make sure the hinge isn't going to run into that glass at all. There is a little bit of an overhang on the hinge and you don't want it overhanging onto the glass itself. There's about 1/8 of an inch reveal, which is perfect. Next, we're going to secure the glass in place using these little glass metal retainer clips. Now these are Rockler brand. They're my personal favorite to use because they're low profile and they have a nice look to them, but there are a ton of different options for these clips out there. You can get them clear, you can get them white, you can get them black. So just use whatever you feel comfortable with. But I will put a link to these in the video description down below. Now, I've seen some people put like 20 of these clips on one cabinet door. That seems a little excessive, if you ask me. I like to put 4 of them. I don't put any on the top or the bottom because sometimes they interfere with the face frame of the cabinet. So I like to put 1 above and below the cabinet hinges, and then I just match that on the other side. 4 is plenty, the glass isn't going to go anywhere, and if you have to replace it, well, you only have to take off 4 clips instead of 20. Let's be serious, that's just crazy sauce. It is important to note that the screws that come with these clips are tiny and probably not the strongest screws out there, so I always pre-drill every hole and then I just use a screwdriver to hand screw them in so that I don't snap the heads off. But what do you know? I've created this beautiful looking shaker style glass cabinet door. The glass is nice and secure, it's pre-drilled for hinges, and it's ready to install. Well, not quite ready. I'm going to take this all apart and paint it, and of course I have to make the built-in that these will be attached to, which you can see in the next video. So stay tuned for that next week. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Now you know how I make cabinet doors with glass in them. If you want to see these exact doors installed in a built-in, I'm doing that in my next video, so stay tuned. And you're going to see the whole built-in process, including these cabinet doors installed. Now, if you're not doing so by now, you should subscribe so that when that next video comes out, you're notified. Also, you can go over to Instagram, follow me there, Facebook. I just started a Twitter page. I don't really know what that means, but I've almost got 200 followers, so you could be 201. So do all that stuff, and you might want to check out some of these other videos. They could be helpful. All right. See you later.